report. Protesters and riot police squared off in Turkey for a second straight day. This dramatic video shows a protester getting knocked down by water cannon in the streets of the capital, Ankara. The demonstrations began in Istanbul, but have spread as far away as the port city of Izmir. More than 900 people have been detained, and at least 79 others have been injured throughout Turkey. The Turkish government is calling for calm. Meanwhile, protesters have flooded into Taksim Park in Istanbul after riot police withdrew on Saturday afternoon. The demonstration started initially over plans to raise the park and replace it with a shopping center. CNN's Ivan Watson spoke with protesters in Istanbul to find out why they're so angry with the government.
The crowd here is chanting Tayyip İstifa. That means the Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan resign. Now we're in Gezi Park in Istanbul, Turkey's largest city. And this is where the protest movement began on Monday with just a couple dozen people protesting against a government plan to demolish the park and build a shopping mall. Well, the small group of demonstrators was repeatedly attacked by riot police using tear gas, water cannons, pepper spray, and it finally touched off citywide riots on Friday and throughout the night into Saturday morning. The riot police have withdrawn. The clouds of tear gas that were prevalent are finally gone. And the demonstrators are saying this is no longer about a park in Istanbul. It's now about the excessive use of police force and about the government of the elected prime minister himself, Recep Tayyip Erdogan.
This park was just, ignition of all that. Erdogan government is usually considered as authoritative. He has big ego. He has this, Napoleon syndrome on it. He thinks himself as the next sultan and controlling all this Middle Eastern politics and such. He needs to stop doing that. He's just a prime minister.
And CNN's Ivan Watson is joining us now live from Istanbul. Ivan, what is the situation now as we speak? I hear a lot of commotion behind you.
Well, here in Taksim, the scene is pretty festive right now. I don't know if you can see behind me the crowd here. We're hearing music and drums. Somebody lit a bonfire. There have been some fireworks as well taking place here. Not far away from here, there are still demonstrators clashing with riot police in the direction of the Prime Minister's office in Istanbul. And we've gotten some details, some facts from the Turkish Interior Minister via the official Anatolian agency. He came out saying that about 939 people have been detained, that 53 citizens have been wounded since these protests started, one critically, and that 26 security forces have been wounded. And this is interesting. He said that there have been protests in 30 of Turkey's 81 provinces over the course of the last 3 days. That shows you how quickly what started as a handful of people trying to protect this park here in Istanbul from being demolished, what started as a very small, peaceful sit-in has blossomed into something that is creating unrest in a number of different Turkish cities and provinces. We've talked to a number of residents of the Turkish capital, Ankara, to the east of here, and there they're describing running clashes between riot police and demonstrators in the neighborhood of Kizilay. It's not really clear what the demonstrators want. This has erupted in just a matter of 36 hours, but the chant we're hearing again and again from the crowd behind me, Relitsa, is resign Tayyip. That's the Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Relitsa?
Ivan, what can you tell us about the protesters? Who are they? How much support do they have?
I can say here in Istanbul, the crowd is predominantly secular, but it does run through a cross-current of different ideologies. For instance, we've seen members of a pro-Kurdish party side by side with members of one of the main secular opposition parties. These have been ideological foes in the past, marching side by side along with leftists, communists, socialists, nationalists, women's rights activists, union workers as well. So this is really drawn from, I would argue, a predominantly secular side of Turkish society. It's important to note that the Turkish Prime Minister and his ruling Justice and Development Party, they have been very successful at the ballot boxes repeatedly over the course of the last decade since they've been elected to power. They've won a mandate of more than 50% of the vote, much of that coming from more conservative, pious Muslims in this overwhelmingly Muslim country. The people here are saying that the government is not adequately representing the secular side of Turkish society. Many people inflamed by a recent law that was rushed through Parliament just a week or so ago, severely restricting the sale and distribution of alcohol. That is a main issue in the culture wars in Turkey that have been going on for quite a while between pious Muslims and the ruling government and more secular urban circles in Turkish society. And many of the people in this crowd here are drinking right now alcohol and beer almost as a show of defiance against the Turkish government.
Ivan
Lisa.
Watson in Istanbul, thank you very much. Now let's get a better idea of what's happening in the Turkish capital of Ankara. Violence broke out again there on Saturday, with protesters hurling rocks at riot police, who responded by firing tear gas and chasing people with batons. Deniz Kilislioglu of our affiliate CNN Turk was there, and he joins me now on the line to tell us what the situation is. Deniz.
First of all, we should say it has been 10 hours right now. The clashes between the Turkish police and the demonstrators are going on. As CNN Turk, we have been in Kızılay since noontime. The protesters firstly wanted to show their solidarity to what happened last 5 days in Taksim Square, but after 1 hour later, Turkish police firstly announced and asked them to leave. Right after that, they fired the tear gases and water cannon at demonstrators, and after that moment, everything was out of control. As I told you at the beginning, it has been 10 hours right now. The clashes, the police intervention is going on. But when we compare at noon times, we can say that the tension is a little bit lower, because the police withdraw a little bit from square, but still they don't let the demonstrations split out everywhere and constantly fire tear gases on their ways. We should also say that since it was Saturday, the people were in the streets. Kızılay is the most popular city center in Ankara. People were trying to have a nice weekend and with a nice weather with their children. And after the police intervention, we can say that a lot of people, especially the women and children, are affected from the tear gases, and so many people are injured. But we cannot right now tell the exact number because there is no official statement yet. And also we have seen some badly wounded people at the square, but there is also no death, we should say. But of course we have to wait for the official statement that's going to come up from the Turkish officials. At the end, I should repeat it again, it has been 10 hours right now. The clashes are going at the capital of Turkey.
So what comes tomorrow? Will they continue to protest? What are their demands?
Probably they will, but we are not sure for that. But we're expecting the new demonstrations will be coming up. Everybody, all the journalists are getting ready for that. So we know that they're going to keep their demonstrations tomorrow and maybe the day after. We had a chance to talk with the people what they want. Of course, it started from the Gezi Park, but when we asked to the people in Ankara, they said that they feel under pressure of AK Party government, and today they called government to resign. As far as I listened to people, the majority of their catchphrase was this demand: they called the government to resign.
Deniz Kilislioglu of our affiliate CNN Turk, thank you very much for speaking with us about the situation in the capital of Turkey, Ankara. Meanwhile, Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan has broken his silence on the demonstrations. In a speech broadcast nationwide, he took a hard line against the protesters, but he also said that the use of excessive force by the police would not be tolerated.
Şimdi diyorlar ki orada AB...
Despite provocations by illegal organizations, despite the damage done to local shops, despite attacks with stones and petrol bombs, the police force continues to operate with the authority it was given. But as I said before, I have given orders to the Interior Minister and to the Governor. Necessary steps will be taken if excessive force is used.
Mr. Erdogan admitted security forces have made errors, especially in their use of pepper gas. He said reports of excessive use of force are being researched and investigated. Coming up next on World Report, new charges are filed in the gruesome murder of over